Okay, let's unpack this. There's always this huge moment when a massive multi-year story comes to an end, right?
Definitely.
Like finishing the final book in a massive fantasy series or the last season of a long-running show. The immediate question is always, what happens next?
Absolutely. Especially with shared universes of this scale.
Hmm.
Wrapping up one epic chapter, well, it naturally leaves everyone to wonder about the foundation being laid for the next one.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've got this great stack of source material you, our listener, shared with us articles, research reports, your own notes, all pointing towards the grand finale of Marvel's multiverse saga.
That's right. We've gone through everything you sent over, and the mission for this deep dive is really to cut through the noise
Yeah.
and extract the absolute most important insights and maybe surprising details from these sources, just to give you the clearest possible roadmap for what Marvel seems to be planning from 2025 through 2027.
And maybe even a peek beyond that.
And even a little bit beyond, yeah. Our goal is to explore what these sources reveal is most significant about Phase 6.
Okay, so let's jump in. Where do we start?
Well, based on the sources you provided, Phase 6 is set to span from 2025 through 2027.
Right, those 3 years. And this phase is explicitly called out in the materials as the final phase of the multiverse saga. So everything we've seen since, what, WandaVision and Loki?
Exactly. Phases 4 and 5, it's all been building to this.
Gotcha. And the scope. It's not just movies.
No, the scope, according to these sources, is quite broad. It incorporates feature films, Disney Plus television series, both live action and animated,
Okay.
and even a special presentation.
What's fascinating here is that the sources give us clear bookends for this phase. It starts with the Fantastic Four, first steps.
That's the kickoff,
Yeah.
July 2025. And it culminates with Avengers, Secret Wars in December 2027.
Wow, okay. Those titles alone suggest the scale of what's planned. Fantastic Four to Secret Wars. So, kicking things off is the Fantastic Four. First steps, July 25, 2025. The sources highlight this as the official intro of the MCU's F4.
They do. And the materials make a point of noting its distinct aesthetic. They describe it as having a 1960s inspired setting.
Interesting. And the core cast is locked in, according to these reports.
Seems so. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Eben Moss-Bachrach as Ben Grimm.
Okay, solid cast.
Yeah. And what's particularly noteworthy, as reported in your sources, are the major cosmic characters tied to this film right from the start.
Oh, yeah, like who?
They mentioned Julia Garner has been cast as the Silver Surfer, specifically the Shala Ball version.
Right, Chalabal, not Norrin Rad.
Exactly. And Ralph Ineson is set to play Galactus. The sources frame this casting as, confirming these huge cosmic entities are central right away.
Okay, so they're not waiting around. And production-wise, it sounds like it's moving fast.
It does.
Yeah.
Filming wrapped recently, and the first trailer apparently dropped back in February of 2025. So it's in post-production.
Right, and connecting it forward.
Yeah, connecting it directly to the saga's conclusion, the sources explicitly state that the main Fantastic Four cast is confirmed to appear in the next 2 Avengers movies.
Doomsday and Secret Wars.
So they aren't just getting an origin story. They're immediately positioned as critical players for the finale.
Makes sense if Galactus is showing up in their first movie. Okay, now, while that kicks off the film side, the sources also lay out a pretty packed slate for Disney Plus during Phase 6, right? Across 2025 and 2026.
Yeah, there's a real mix here. Starting with animation, actually, we have Eyes of Wakanda,
Right, Wakanda.
a 4-episode animated series releasing August 6, 2025. The sources say it's currently in production.
Okay, then there's Marvel Zombies, another animated one.
Also animated, also 4 episodes, scheduled for October 3, 2025.
And the sources clarified this one takes place in a separate universe, right? Within the multiverse.
Correct. And it's interesting, they mentioned it will feature voice actors reprising roles for many fan-favorite MCU characters. That one's also in production.
Okay. Shifting to live action then.
Yep. Wonder Man is expected in December 2025. It's an 8-episode series.
And it's under that Marvel Spotlight banner. What does that mean again, according to the sources?
The sources describe that as a way for Marvel to signal projects that are more sort of standalone and character-focused.
Got it.
It stars Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Simon Williams. And the sources specifically mention Ben Kingsley is reprising his role as Trevor Slattery.
Trevor Slattery's back. And status.
The series is in post-production.
Right. Then March 2026, we get more Daredevil.
Yes, Charlie Cox is back as Matt Murdock in Daredevil, Born Again Season 2.
Season 2.
Season 2. The sources confirm this is an 8-episode continuation, and a major detail highlighted is Kristen Ritter joining the cast,
Jessica Jones.
reprising a role as Jessica Jones from the previous Netflix series.
Wow. Okay, that's big. Is that filming now?
This one is currently filming, yes. Okay.
What else for 2026?
Also slated for 2026 is the live-action Vision Quest series.
Vision Quest.
The sources confirm Paul Bettany returns as Vision and that the show will pick up after the events of WandaVision.
Okay, post-WandaVision.
And an intriguing detail mentioned is that James Spader is returning as the voice of Ultron.
Ultron. Whoa. Okay, how does that work?
Sources don't elaborate much beyond that, just confirm his return. This series is currently listed as in development.
All right, lots to think about there. Any more animation?
One more on the animated side for 2026, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2.
Season 2. Has Season 1 even aired yet?
Not yet, no. Hudson Thames voices Peter Parker. And the sources note that surprising production detail. This series, which was previously titled Spider-Man Freshman Year,
Right, I remember that title.
has already been renewed for a 3rd season.
Before Season 1. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's currently in production.
And finally, any specials?
Yes. Rounding out the reported TV slate for 2026 is an untitled live-action Marvel Studios special presentation. This one's focused on The Punisher.
John Bernthal.
John Bernthal is back as Frank Castle, and the sources offer a vivid description, calling it like a shotgun blast of a story.
Huh. Sounds intense. And that's in development, too.
Also in development, yes.
Okay, so after that solid lineup of streaming stuff, the sources point back to the movies, to a pivotal moment in the film slate with Spider-Man. Brand New Day.
Yes, the next Tom Holland Spider-Man film. It's dated for July 31st, 2026.
And the creative team.
Mentioned is Destin Daniel Cretton directing.
From Shang-Chi.
Right. Chris McKenna and Eric Summers writing, they did the previous Holland films, and Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal producing, Sony Pictures releasing, distributing, of course. It's currently in pre-production.
Now, here's where the sources reveal something really interesting about the story. They report that the plot had to be significantly changed.
That's the report, yeah. Because the movie was originally planned to come out before Avengers Doomsday, but the schedule shifted. So now it's arriving after that huge event.
Okay, that is a big shift. How does a Spider-Man story fit into a post-Doomsday world?
Well, that's the question. The sources share some intriguing reports and rumors suggesting the movie could potentially take place on Battleworld.
Battleworld. Okay, explain that based on the sources, for listeners maybe not familiar.
Right. So Battleworld in the comics material often cited in relation to this is usually described as this patchwork planet. It's made up of fragments of different realities that kind of smash together during a major multiversal collapse.
Like after an event maybe called Doomsday?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
So the idea that the next Spider-Man film is set there right after Doomsday, well, really makes you wonder.
Yeah.
The sources suggest this placement and setting mean the film could effectively serve as a direct sequel to Doomsday.
Huh. Okay. What else? Any casting rumors?
Adding another layer of speculation from the sources is the casting of Sadie Sink in a main role.
From Stranger Things. Okay. Who might she be playing?
Well, the prevailing fan theories and insider reports mentioned in the materials speculate she could be playing characters like Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, wow.
Or MJ, or potentially Mayday Parker, who, in some comics, is the daughter of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Mayday Parker. Interesting. So multiversal possibilities are still very much on the table.
Seems like it. The sources frame these possibilities as pretty significant, depending on how the multiverse is handled post-Doomsday.
And speaking of other Spider-Men, the sources note Sony wants them back.
Yeah, the sources mentioned Sony specifically wants the other two live-action Spider-Men, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, to return in this film.
Okay. And production timing.
A production detail mentioned that ties these films together even more tightly is the expectation that Brand New Day is planned to shoot concurrently, like at the same time as Avengers. Doomsday.
Shooting Spider-Man and Avengers side by side. Busy times. Okay. So, that brings us to the two enormous films that the sources define as the absolute conclusion of the entire multiverse saga.
Where it fits.
Avengers, Doomsday, and Avengers, Secret Wars.
Right, the big two-parter, essentially. Setting the stage, Avengers, Doomsday is scheduled for release on December 18th, 2026.
And the directors.
The sources confirm the return of the Russo brothers.
Okay, the Infinity War Endgame guys, that's significant.
Directing and producing, yeah. And Michael Waldron and Stephen McFeely are writing the script.
Waldron from Loki and Multiverse of Madness, McFeely from Infinity War Endgame with Marcus. Okay, heavy hitters.
Definitely. Now, this film is where the sources confirm the major villain pivot we talked about.
Right, no more Kang.
Originally, the saga's main antagonist was set to be Kang the Conqueror, but the sources explained that due to the legal issues and subsequent firing of Jonathan Majors.
The actor who played Kang.
Right. The primary antagonist for both films, Doomsday and Secret Wars, is now confirmed to be Doctor Doom.
Dr. Doom, okay. And the casting.
And the most seismic casting news highlighted in the sources is Robert Downey Jr.
Wait, the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man.
Iconic as Iron Man, returning to the MCU in a completely different role. The villain, Victor Von Doom, Doctor Doom.
Whoa, okay. That's unexpected. Are the sources sure about that?
The sources confirm he will be in both Doomsday and Secret Wars. And the reports frame this casting as particularly insightful. They note how playing the ultimate villain contrasts sharply with his iconic hero role.
Yeah, no kidding.
And what that meta-narrative could add to the saga's conclusion. Maybe giving Doom a surprising level of gravitas.
Wow, RDJ is Doom. Okay, so who's fighting him in Doomsday?
What's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the team-up described in the sources. The materials explicitly state that the Avengers, the Wakandans, the Fantastic Four—
Fresh off their debut.
Right. The new Avengers and the original X-Men team up to face Doctor Doom.
The original X-Men from the Fox movies.
That's what the sources indicate. They describe it as an unprecedented convergence.
Okay, who? Do the sources name names?
They do. Specific actors from 20th Century Fox's X-Men film series confirmed to reprise their roles. Ian McKellen as Magneto,
McKellen.
Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, and James Marsden as Cyclops.
Marsden Cyclops, okay.
Plus, they also mentioned Kelsey Grammer as Beast and Patrick Stewart as Professor X, who, had previously returned in other MCU projects.
Right, and Multiverse of Madness and the Marvels. Okay, so it's a massive reunion.
Seems like it. The sources also provide a timeline reference for Doomsday, stating it's set 14 months after the events of the Thunderbolts film, which comes out in 2025.
Okay, so there's a bit of a time jump. And production status for Doomsday.
In terms of production, filming for Doomsday began in April 2025 at Pinewood Studios in England. It's expected to last about 6 months, so it's currently filming.
Okay. That leads directly into the grand finale, Avengers.
Yeah.
Secret Wars, schedules for December 17th, 2027.
Yep, the final chapter. Again, the sources confirm the Russo brothers are directing and producing, with Waldron and McFeely writing.
And RDJ is back as Doom.
Robert Downey Jr. is confirmed to return as Dr. Doom, yes. And the main Fantastic Four cast from First Steps and Doomsday will also be back.
So the F4 are really central to this whole finale.
Seems that way. Production of Secret Wars is scheduled to begin in mid-2026, also at Pinewood in England, with another expected 6-month shoot. It's currently in development.
Okay, so the big question. What happens? How does it all end? What do the sources say about the outcome of Secret Wars?
Well, the key takeaway about the conclusion, as interpreted by the sources, is the expectation that the multiverse will be destroyed.
Destroyed, like completely.
And then rebuilt. That's the prevailing theory based on the reports.
Destroyed and rebuilt. Okay, how? And what does that actually mean?
The sources discuss the theory that Franklin Richards—
Reed Richards' son.
Right, who's known for immense reality-warping powers in the comics, that he will likely play a significant role in restoring the multiverse. Perhaps universe by universe over time.
Like rebuilding reality piece by piece.
That's one interpretation discussed. And the sources highlight that the Russo brothers themselves have referred to Doomsday and Secret Wars as a new beginning.
A new beginning.
Which the reports interpret as likely signaling the birth of a new, possibly unified universe where all these converging characters, particularly mutants and the X-Men, can formally exist together. Or maybe, yeah, it's a slow, deliberate restoration process. Either way, a fundamental reset.
Okay. So if Secret Wars is the end of the multiverse saga as we know it, the sources give us a strong hint about what comes next then, this new beginning.
They do. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige has reportedly already designated the era after Secret Wars as the mutant era.
A mutant era. Okay, that's pretty explicit.
And the sources connect this directly back to the significant presence of the X-Men in these final Avengers films. They note that Marvel has already scheduled 3 specific release dates for 2028.
3 films in 2028.
With one confirmed to be for a new X-Men film.
A proper MCU X-Men movie, finally.
Seems to be the plan. One of the other 2028 dates is speculated in the sources to be for the Blade film.
Blade. That's been in development for a while.
It has. Although the sources do mention recent uncertainty around that project's specific release status.
Yeah.
Things seem a bit in flux there.
Right. And anything else on overall strategy?
Just that on an overall strategy level, The sources touch upon recent statements from Disney indicating a planned reduction in the overall volume of Marvel content.
Fewer projects.
Yeah, aiming for closer to 2, 3 films and approximately 2 series per year moving forward. Kind of getting back to a more focused approach, maybe.
Quality over quantity, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So, to recap this deep dive, based entirely on the sources you provided us,
Yeah?
we've journeyed through the roadmap for Phase 6. It's a lot.
It really is, from the introduction of the Fantastic Four in their distinct 1960s setting.
Moving through a diverse and packed slate of Disney Plus shows and specials. I mean, Daredevil and Jessica Jones back together, Vision Quest with Ultron, that Punisher special.
Then navigating that significant story shift for the Spider-Man film because of its post-Doomsday placement, potentially setting it on Battleworld.
And building to the epic two-part conclusion, you've got the Russo brothers back, the massive surprise of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom.
Right, RDJ as Doom, and that huge convergence of heroes, including classic X-Men actors, facing him.
All culminating in the potential destruction and rebuilding of the multiverse itself in Secret Wars, which looks like it's designed to usher in this mutant era.
Exactly. It's a complex, sprawling plan laid out in these sources with some potentially huge implications.
Yeah, the scale of the changes hinted at is just immense.
It really is.
So here's the final thought, I guess, based on everything these sources suggest. With the multiverse potentially collapsing into a single reality, or being rebuilt piece by piece, maybe by Franklin Richards, and with all these familiar characters from different universes converging in such a dramatic way against Doctor Doom, what are the most exciting or maybe the most challenging possibilities this completely new landscape presents? For the stories Marvel can tell and for the characters, that we might see interact in totally unexpected ways, that feels like the huge question left hanging by these reports.